Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. So Nvidia has yet another price drop, but most likely you're still not going to want to buy. During the last holiday sale, they had a pretty significant price drop, and this is going to be primarily on the very expensive GPUs. Most notably, the 3090 Ti took a pretty big dip around 1149, and in this particular sale, they've cut the price yet again. We've seen a 3090 Ti now for under $1,100. Some models as low as 1049 to 1099. Now, in my opinion, this isn't really much or very interesting at all. We are right next to the RTX 4000 launch. That's going to be pretty major in terms of the prices for these GPUs. And even more importantly, the biggest factor here, why is Nvidia not discounting nearly as much the much cheaper GPUs that people would actually buy? Most people are not going to want to get a 3090 Ti. I'm sure they sell a decent amount of them when the price goes that low, just because we still don't know what's happening with the 4090. But you can bet that if a 3070 was discounted anywhere near the percentage that a 3090 Ti is being discounted, they would sell significantly more of those. But once again, it seems like Nvidia just has a massive amount of stock of these high-end GPUs, anywhere from the 3080 on up. So there are a couple of interesting things that we can note from these sales. However, for the first time, I'm seeing a lot more cohesion. Like, for example, the EVGA GPUs were the ones that I saw mostly on sale. And before, even though EVGA is sold in many various places like EVGA themselves, Micro Center, Amazon, Newegg, and online, now you're actually seeing them listed in the various places together. Now, what's happening here is that, it's not like they had that much margin and they're just taking that loss. Nvidia would be giving them a significant rebate behind the scenes so that they can drop these prices for the consumer, with the main goal here to clear out inventory for the RTX 4000 that should be releasing within the next few months. Now, it is interesting that we mostly just see the discounts on the really high-end GPUs. I mean, it kind of makes sense that Nvidia has a lot of these chips. If you look at it, they're going to be the most profitable, most likely. Not as much profit in the much cheaper GPUs, even though they can sell them in a much grander scale. You can bet that they can price in a considerable more amount of profit in something like a 3090 or a 3090 Ti. It's not that huge of a difference in terms of what technically is there, but they can charge $500 more. Definitely not worth that big of a difference, especially considering since the memory is very similar aside from where it's located. So you can see that they had probably good reason to make even more high-end chips, focus on those, probably a lot more lucrative. But when the market sort of really collapsed and people weren't buying GPUs anymore, a glut of those GPUs stay in stock. And I really don't think that these type of sales that they're doing are really going to move the needle at this point at all. It would have to be a more significant discount even on high-end GPUs, and they would have to include more of the low-end GPUs. Sometimes they'll include like the 1660 and the 2060s, which are, much older and weaker GPUs. And it's nice to see they went down from where they used to be, but nobody wants to buy those when a 3060 you can get nearly for the same price on the used market if you look around a little bit. So there's definitely a huge gap in what's going on here. And when RTX 4000 does release, it's really going to do some significant damage to the price of RTX 3000. And I think Nvidia knows that. That's why they're trying to do these sales and get them out the door. But in my opinion, it's really not enough because the prices have gone down a little bit, but they're still not at the point where anybody would really buy them. Another interesting GPU here that's really on the high end, $799 for a 3080 Ti. Now, this could be seen as a pretty good value if you really think about it, because the 3080 Ti was well over $1,200. That's around the price of most 3080s for the life of RTX 3000. You have to ask yourself, this late into the game, nearly on the doorstep of the release of RTX 4000, is an $800 3080 Ti really going to be worth it? Now, there's not really much other choice. You can go a little higher and get a 3090. They've been in the $900 range, but unless you're a content creator, there's not going to be many gaming gains and performance gains for your, $150 or whatever it ends up being. May not be worth it and probably have more issues with VRAM, as the 3090s were known to do. Or if you step down a little bit into the 3080, the 3080s have not gone down in price nearly that much. That's sort of where that pricing wall, I think, is around the 3070 Ti, 3080. That level GPU has not witnessed as much of a depreciation as everything from a 3080 Ti on up. You'll still find a lot of 3080s in the $700 range and maybe some as low as $699, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty close to that 3080 Ti, so it seems like a pretty good bet, at least for that price if you view it in a vacuum. But if you step back and you see that we're probably going to get something like a 4070 within the next few months, that may equal or perhaps beat the performance of that 3080 Ti for even a few $100s less, it's not such a good deal. But by the very nature of these companies advertising these sales and these prices, they're expecting people to buy that 3080 Ti right now at that price, at $799. And I'm sure there will be people who buy it. I mean, if you need a GPU now, you don't really want a 4090. Who knows when the 4080 will be released? Maybe it's not the worst deal. I've seen people pay well over twice to three times $799 for a 3080 Ti during the the really bad times in the GPU scalper market on the secondhand market. So it's definitely not going to be the most somebody paid for it. Definitely not the best performance to value right now, especially $799. It's not going to be the highest end 3080 Ti. It's still an EVGA, the XC3, which is pretty good, but it's not a 4013 or something like that. But anyway, definitely don't buy now, but some people will, as Nvidia and EVGA expect them to at least clear out some of that inventory. Depending on your use case, may not be the worst idea, but in general, definitely going to be better to wait. And those that want an even cheaper GPU, like $200 to $300 range, certainly this is going to be pushing some of those prices down more. But as we've said, the lower end and sort of entry budget market has not really been affected nearly as much, just because there's not as much margin for them to really knock that price down nearly as much, even with a rebate for Nvidia. And I'm sure they sell those cheaper GPUs a lot easier, and it's probably much harder to hold on to the really high-end GPUs because they're a lot bigger overhead. They have to turn those chips into 3080s, 3080 Ti's into something, and they're obviously going to be considerably harder to sell, as we've seen with the 3090 Ti and how much they've had to drop that price of the GPU. So in conclusion, still don't buy now. It's nice to see a sale on GPUs and see these lower prices, but it doesn't mean they're going to stay this low. And with RTX 4000 comes out and they no longer need to clear inventory of RTX 3000, you can bet that these prices will likely continue to stay pretty high, pretty elevated. This might just be pretty temporary, so we're going to see what happens, but stay strong. Don't buy anything now unless you see a $300 3080 Ti. I think when RTX 4000 does come out, we're going to see even cheaper RTX 3000, or if your preference is for the highest performance, you're going to have the option of the RTX 4000. All right, guys, let me know any other deals you've seen lately. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.